What's up, guys? Good morning. This is another episode of the Train to Win podcast. Big sigh. I had to get that oxygen recirculated, man. Here's the deal. Today, we're going to talk about the number one lie that I see parents believing that holds their youth athletes back. And before we get into that, a quick word from our sponsor. Guys, this show is sponsored by Covenant Coffee. They are Hope in a Cup, providing awesome opportunities to foster youth that are coming out of the system, getting them careers, getting them started in the workforce, providing them opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. Guys, it's kind of hard. If you're not like a coffee file, I don't know if there's a more proper term for that. You might think, oh, all coffee is the same. If you believe that, then you want to go chase after a company with an awesome mission. Covenant Coffee, they're yours, okay? So if you live in the Central Valley and are looking for a good cup of joe, go seek out one of their shops. They got a number of them all over the county, all right? All right, to the main event. Today, back to school. We're in that season, all right? Everybody, all these athletes are going back to their fall sports. Parents are getting back into school mode. And we as strength coaches, if you know anything about this industry, we like to rant, okay? But I'm of the mind that you don't rant about things without also bringing solutions. And everything I've always been about, going back to my high school teaching days, everything comes from a root of like education, okay? We can't talk about issues if we're not also willing to educate people on, why they're issues, okay? So today, the biggest thing that I wanted to lay out for you guys is the biggest pitfall I see families falling into, okay? No doubt, if you follow me, you likely care about your kids' future. You care about their athletic performance, but you also likely care about the human side of sports as well, them creating or becoming awesome human beings, working with great coaches, developing the self-esteem needed to be successful in the world, and all the other things that sports provides. What we're going to talk about today is how abstaining from the physical performance side of youth athlete training could be holding back your student athlete. You see, I've trained over 1,500 athletes since 2020 alone. We're a COVID business, okay? Before that, I was a high school football coach. I ran that weight room as well. I obviously spent many years in the classroom. I like to believe that I understand youth athletes, students, as well as, the typical family dynamic. But I look at strength and conditioning as more than just like speed, strength, bigger, better, faster, stronger. We also have to identify what it can do for them off the field or court as well. Across all those years of experience and in every single consultation and interaction I've had with families, the number one thing that I've seen that holds back more kids than anything else is when parents and families buy the lie that youth athletes should not be engaging in some sort of extracurricular training outside of what they're doing with their teams. Okay. So we have to define what we're talking about here. When I say extracurricular activity, I don't mean speed and agility training, the going to the park and working with a skills coach. It's just extended team training because they're working on the skills component, not necessarily the physical component. All right. I'm not talking about positional training. I'm not talking about going to a batting coach, a pitching coach, any of that kind of stuff. What I'm talking about is something that pushes the physiological boundaries of what your student athlete is currently capable of to improve them at a physiological level, right? So we're not talking about skills. We're talking about speed, strength, agility, mobility, things like that, okay? And I call these more like hard skills. You either have it or you don't, right? Soft skills are more like being coachable, skill acquisition, things like that. We're talking more along the lines of like injury prevention, improving horsepower, things of that nature, okay? For years, there was a stigma that came with youth athlete training. I can't tell you how many parents I've met with that, their biggest concern is their student athletes' growth being stunted. I'm actually not sure where this came from, okay? But I can tell you right now, it's been refuted a million times. And at this point, it's more of a wives' tale than anything else. Okay. This is a really harmful rabbit hole, or belief system to adopt, because what it does is it limits your student athlete's growth potential and puts them behind the 8 ball going into high school. If, let's say that they play football, they play for an organization that maybe spends time in the weight room, they will likely in the year 2024 be behind all the more progressive families that took that risk, if you want to call it that, or wanted to do things a little bit differently and give their kids that extra training, they will be behind with less skills under their belt, with less coordination abilities, with less neuromuscular efficiency, okay, than their peers that would have started it sooner, okay? So in my opinion, this is a really dangerous set of beliefs to rely upon. And if it's just a wives' tale, just like there are parties, can we acknowledge that there are like parties out there that say that red meat is harmful for us? If you have any amount of common sense, you know that's not right. Okay, you can't just say that what we've been doing for the last 5,000, since I'm not even going to put a number on that. However long humans have been on the earth, if you're going to sit here and tell me that that is incorrect for our development, sorry, I'm not going to believe it, right? There are parties out there that say that drinking cow's milk and eating eggs is is unhealthy. We know better, right? So if we can inject a little bit of common sense into this, if you guys will go down this rabbit hole with me, I'd like to explore how we can avoid it. All right. Let's avoid the cult. All right. So here's the deal. Times are changing. The stigma is fading. Not as quickly as I would like, but it is fading. You've got females that are more apt to engage in resistance training. Athletes are starting younger. Market research says that in just 10 years ago, so in 2014, the average starting age for youth athletes to begin training like this was age 12 to 14 on average. Now, fast forward a decade, in the year 2024, thank goodness, they're starting earlier. The average age is now a little bit lower at age 10 to 12. Okay. I'm a little bit biased. I started when I was 12 years old, and I'm super thankful my dad did that for me, right? But not every child has a set of parents with that background. If you don't, you need to go find a coach that does, okay? If you're going to sit here and say that you're doing the most for your athlete, but you're loading them up with a ton of super aggressive, chaotic sport training year round, but you're not doing what it takes to prepare their bodies physiologically for those stresses in training volumes, you're putting them in a spot that is ultimately compromising their development. Okay. So guys, just within reference, in the last decade, the average age has gone down roughly 2 years for youth athletes starting. Now the age is 10 to 12. Elsewhere in the world, they start as young as 6 to 7 year olds. You have to understand that America is largely behind the rest of the world in this respect. And without going down that rabbit hole, in the 60s, we were applying our R&D funds towards aerobic capacity and winning gold medals in the endurance sports. Whereas, the Eastern Bloc, Soviet Union, the Germans, the Bulgarians, all of them were like, well, man, we're going to pour our R&D into the strength sports because that's where the most opportunity for medals is. It's an Olympic year. I think this is at the forefront of all of our minds. And that's where we diverged. Okay. That doesn't mean it was correct. Now, 60, 70 years later, less than that. You can tell I was an English teacher. My math's wrong. 60 years later, you can tell that we've caught up. We're beginning to kind of, pull our head out of our butts. And we know that there's so many benefits to resistance training. It shouldn't have been all about the heart. It shouldn't have been all about aerobics all the time. Okay. And I think that might be where it started, but guys, you got to put it into it eventually. So if you're a parent of an athlete, don't join the no resistance training cult. If you've got a middle school aged athlete or a fifth grader that, you say you take their sport seriously, let's put an end to that today. Okay. So what I wanted to do was break down some myths. Okay. I'm going to break down the top 3 most common myths around this, and then provide you guys some ammo to go take with you into your student athletes playing career so that you can start making a difference. Okay. Number 1, and we already kind of touched on this. The biggest thing I hear is parents are like, well, doesn't it stunt their growth? Doesn't it negatively affect their growth plates? No. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, there is not a single study that supports this. So when I say I really don't know where it came from, I really don't know. Okay. There is not a single piece of literature that says that. Okay. Now there is literature that says that if done improperly, without proper supervision, or executing a plan that maybe they had supervision, but it was made by what's the word I'm looking for? Someone that wasn't professional. Okay. Yeah. It can hurt your son or daughter. So can drunk driving. Okay. So are we going to say that no one should drive cars? No, this is what you would call a post hoc fallacy. Okay. A post hoc fallacy is basically when you associate what's the word I'm looking for? Subject A did this, they got hurt after. It must have been this one thing that did it, completely irrespective of the chaos of life and all the other factors going on in their career that may have contributed to the outcome. It's a fallacy because logically you cannot say that was the only cause, right? But this gets propagated by parties that would rely on fear to, get you to either buy what they want you to buy or believe what they want you to believe. It's manipulation. So don't follow the fear mongering. If you stay away from CNN because that's what they do, I hope that you run very quickly in the opposite direction of anybody telling you that, oh, this kid got injured. By the way, he also weight trains. That must be the cause. Guys, run away. Okay. There's literally no evidence to support this. And again, read up on your fallacies. There are 1,000,001 ways you can be manipulated. Don't fall for it. Okay. Myth number 2, weight training makes you bulky and slow. So let's say you have the right motives behind your son or daughter's training career, but you go, we could get them resistance training, a more balanced approach with, some added resistance, also focusing on the speed component, also working on some plyometrics, also working on their mobility. That's what we do. Okay. It's more of a holistic view. Or we could take them to the park with this random coach that has worked with all of 30 athletes in the last, 10 years of their career. And he's going to throw out some cones and collect a check from us at the end of the hour. Which one looks like speed training and which one doesn't? Right? This is also a fallacy. All right. Because you have to understand that what you see is not always what you get. There's so much going on inside of the body with resistance training that all the benefits of that far exceed the skill training that they would get at the park. The reason is the body only adapts to the stresses placed on it. So if they're already going to sport practice, I know I touched on this a little bit in last week's recording, but I'm going to come back around because it's really important. If they're doing general change of direction drills, okay, they're also getting that at their sport practice. If they play volleyball, they're getting change of direction. If they're playing football, 7-on-7, baseball, all of that kind of stuff, they're already running. They're doing a lot of field work. Maybe it's more linear. Maybe it's more change direction. You're just pouring water into an already overflowing bucket. And it doesn't take long for the athlete, their body to adapt to that. And then progress stops. Okay. So how many kids do you know that have played all those sports, but they're getting no faster, but they're getting no more elite in their abilities? When the body learns all the answers to the test, you have to change up the questions. All right. Enter resistance training. One of the easiest ways that you can push the body to change is to simply add weight, right? Add reps, add time under tension. These are all things that become way more complicated when you're simply relying on them running around cones every Saturday with a linebackers coach. Okay. And if you're doing it with the wrong person, I'm not saying it can't be done, but a lot of these guys doing it don't have a degree in exercise science. They don't have a background in physiology, right? And so I think that you probably want to make sure that your money's being well spent. It's very hard to apply progressive overload to instigate your athlete's success, generally based on the constraints or the innate limitations of that kind of training. All right. So when they start weight training, okay, let's bring it back to the myth that weight training makes you bulky and slow. It doesn't. It doesn't, unless you just go and eat like a slob and, you go and gain 20 pounds. That's not what we're advocating for here at all. I want to be very clear. Okay. My goal for most athletes, unless you're a contact sport athlete, is keep you the exact same weight, but improve things like your mass specific force. So you can overcome your body's own inertia as well as gravity. That's like a simple way to get fast and explosive. Okay. To improve your own coordination at both the intra and intermuscular level. Without going too deep down that rabbit hole, we want to improve how your muscles fire, as well as how they work together to accomplish a task. Okay. So the easiest way to do that is to literally give it tougher things to do. A heavy squat is a tough thing to do. Your body can't accomplish that task without coordinating itself. You do that over and over, week after week, month after month. We see kids all the time walk in tripping over their own shoelaces, unable to, running form. I get this one all the time. Shouldn't we be doing a bunch of drills for running form? No. Your son or daughter's running technique looks terrible because they're too weak. Basically, their body doesn't trust them to get into the proper, large angle positions that we want to see. We're all watching the Olympics. Those Olympian sprinters look a lot different than my 13-year-olds, right? Especially on day one. And some kids are more uncoordinated than others. We can't undo a lifetime of inactivity in a week, but we get them strong over time. It fixes a lot of that. Okay. So again, it can make them more coordinated and can also work out a lot of kinks in their running technique. And we kill a bunch of birds with one stone, so to speak, by attacking strength training, right? Get them coordinated, fix their running technique, make them more injury resilient, improve their mass specific force to get faster without even really, working the speed thing. It's just easy. I'm a fan of working smarter rather than harder. Okay. And then myth number 3, it's only for meatheads and male athletes. Like I touched on earlier, guys, females are like coming around. Females are learning. They're getting smarter. They're starting to figure out that this is a really easy way to excel in their sport. My guys, even like the sports that generally have a really negative stigma around weight training, the ones that are really hard to convince, I'm going to be honest with you, are like basketball players, high school level track and field athletes, because Bakersfield's just not a huge track town, not a lot of progressive viewpoints there. Okay. Elsewhere in the country, they know better, but here locally, it's very difficult. Sometimes I would say, gymnastics as well. Again, done the wrong way. Yeah. I mean, it can hurt your career, but assuming that you're going to be working with a professional, I hope that you would seek out professionals. That's what the most successful people in the world do. It can really help your careers. So again, it's not about building dumb biceps. It's about prolonging careers, extending playing opportunities, improving things like endurance and mobility through proper ranges of motion, literally improving bone density, all kinds of things, right? It's not about getting jacked. It's about actually, like, I could actually care less if our kids get jacked. I would love to see it, but I'm just saying it's not all their goals. We could keep you at the same height and weight and make you more dominant at that height and weight. I think that makes a lot more sense if you're not going to be hitting people. If you're a track and field sprinter, a triple jumper, a volleyball player, why do we need to make you bigger, right? So there's also a human and psychosocial element to this, all right? So we can't talk about the myth of it being only for meatheads without also touching on how it can affect your student athlete literally in the classroom. Kids who exercise regularly, which we know we don't get from their PE class anymore because they're walking the track and battling over dressing out more than they're actually doing PE, but they actually perform better in the classroom. Okay, we know about, all of us know about the benefits at the neurological level with weight training, how it can actually make them sharper, the endorphins firing in the 72 hours after, in an acute sense, in the 72 hours after following physical exertion. It's going to make them score higher on tests. Their focus is going to be better. They're going to be happier. Who doesn't want that for their kids, right? There's also the psychosocial element of improved confidence. Like, guys, confidence is a dying trait. Again, with all those kids I've worked with, you know what's becoming harder and harder to find? Kids that believe in themselves, And again, we're not going to get into the weeds. Maybe that's another recording for another day, how parents can support their kids at home, be more encouraging, don't let dad be coach, like I said last week, right? But if Instagram and Facebook are killing our kids' confidence, we need to look for ways to build it as well. This is a really easy one because we can stack successes really easily. Remember, going back to progressive overload, if you tell little Cindy that came in thinking she couldn't do any of this, and 3 months later she can do double, triple, quadruple as much as she could on day one, what does that do to her confidence? What does that do to her self-esteem? These are real things worth talking about, because now we're talking about setting them up for success, in high school, in the classroom, at that party on Friday night, sitting with their friends at the football game, whatever. She wears that skin 24/7, whether she's an athlete or not. And eventually sports will stop. We would love to instigate success off the field in our athletes as well. So when you talk about, well, it's just for meatheads, it's not. That's a really dangerous way to think about it. Because in a world where it's just seeking to beat them down at every turn, we should be seeking out outlets that build them up. I can tell you some of our greatest successes at Grindhouse have happened with non-athletes. You would be amazed the children that leave Grindhouse after 2-3 years of consistent training, And again, we don't train them any differently than our athletes. They run, they sprint, they throw things, they lift heavy, they do lots of, we take the same approach. By stacking those successes, we still test them like athletes. We still check in with them regularly as athletes. We still do body composition analyses like athletes. These girls lean out and look like supermodels. The guys, go from bench warmers to starters. My kids who are lifetime students, they don't even come to us for athletic prowess. They believe in their capabilities physically in a way that they never have before. It creates different human beings. It builds resiliency up here, right? And learning things like work ethic, ingraining things like delayed gratification. Like Rome wasn't built in a day. A great body or physical capabilities wasn't built in a day either. Teaching them to prolong that instant gratification that they're all seeking. I don't know where that comes from, but prolonging the dopamine hit goes a long way towards building a well-functioning human as well. Okay. And so I just don't think that it can be understated. The psychosocial element of physical training goes a long way in developing well-rounded humans. Okay. And if you want to argue with me, hit me up in the comments. All right. The last one I want to hit on, and this goes back to the injury thing, guys. I don't know a single family or child that wouldn't benefit from increased bone density. Okay. Injury rates are going up. Go look at the research. They're going up. Kids are playing the same sport year round. They're doing more. They're starting sooner with less of a physical base, like a foundation of actual abilities. All right. It's never been more important that we make our kids more physically resilient. Okay. One of the easiest ways to do that is, again, to put the body under load. That's really hard to do in a sport practice that is unpredictable. Again, you're reacting to someone else in most sports. That's the problem with cone drills. Nothing's predetermined in sport. So if you have a kid running a drill around some extravagant pattern of cones, that's not real life. That's not real sport. Okay. It's also very difficult to overload that. So again, if you're talking about stress, again, we're adaptive animals. If we only adapt to the stresses placed on us and you never apply the stress, then guess what happens when you get hit a funky way and your bones never encountered that stress before in training? Well, weak things break, right? So ultimately, by stressing out the bones, stressing out the body in a controlled manner at a regular cadence, I hope your son or daughter is consistent in this training for months and years, right? They end up becoming more resilient because it actually increases the cross-sectional area of those bones, makes them more dense. It becomes all of a sudden you're working with titanium, not aluminum. That Wolverine movie's out. He's got metal bones. That's what you want your kids to have. Okay. So that's probably the biggest thing I would stress is being able to make our kids more resilient at between the ears. We can talk about spiritual stuff all day. Okay. It's obviously going to condition their heart for the rigors of sport. And last but not least, also improving their bone density and making them, hey, I don't want your kids breaking bones. Okay. So how do we do it? All right. At Grindhouse, we follow a long-term developmental approach starting at 10 years old. The reason for that is, now you can start earlier, and I'm going to tell you why, but the reason for that is for us, just our gym setting, because again, there's such a resistance training component to it. Again, like I said, if it's not supervised properly, it can become dangerous. I'm not here to tell you that like if we had a bunch of 7-year-olds in our gym, they'd all be safe, because I don't have the staff to keep an eye on all of them. So we do require a maturity level, due to the restrictions of our facility. I'm like, hey, do I want to be babysitting 7-year-olds? that I don't know what their maturity level is coming in, or should we reduce it to kids that we can actually trust are going to like keep themselves and others out of harm's way, right? That's kind of where we lean. So we start at 10 years old, okay? Now here's what it looks like on a more global scale, all right? Elsewhere in the world, like I said, they start as young as 6 to 7 years old, up until the age of 10. So let's just say ages 6 to 9. We want to be focusing more on body weight exercises, more kinesthetic awareness, developing dynamic motor control, right? Think of body control. This is balance. This is stability. This is moving well in space, right? You don't need a ton of resistance training with that stuff. I just want them to master their body. They need to be good movers, okay? Again, at a place like Grindhouse, the best facility, like if I had to create a facility for just 6 to 9 year olds, it would be a blank canvas, just literally an open room with only turf. And that's it. And I would train freak athletes on nothing but turf. Again, 7 to 9 years old. Think of what PE class looks like, right? That would be my ideal, PE class from 30 years ago, not today's PE class. But I would want nothing but turf in space to train my youth athletes, okay? Age 10 to 12, intro to resistance training. Okay, so that's what we do here at Grindhouse and where we start them. We don't start them with barbells at 10 to 12 years old. They can learn how to squat, how to hinge, how to press, how to do a pull-up, all these things. These are body weight movements that we can load incredibly safely, very little risk, okay, with other implements. Barbells are unruly. They kind of freak a lot of kids out too. Think about it. That thing's twice the height of, stood up on its end. It's twice the height of most of these kids coming in at 4 feet tall. You know what I mean? And so it becomes unruly. It doesn't make a lot of sense for that age. Okay. So we don't do a lot of axial loading. We're not putting anything on their back or anything like that. They can't perform it safely yet. So we want to teach them how to train. And we're going to do that with a lot of dumbbells, kettlebells, sleds, love sleds, more open chain exercises, things like that. Okay. So 10 to 12, I just want them to love training. I want them to get in the groove of like, hey, this benefits me. I see the correspondence, right? And again, our kids are still getting fast. They're still getting super explosive. I'm just like, hey, let's not overcomplicate it yet. All right. So 10 to 12, intro to resistance training. Age 13 to 15, hey, now we can start applying a barbell, assuming they've been doing all this stuff since 10 years old. They have a couple years under their belt. Hey, I love the barbell. It's the easiest thing to progressively overload. What's easier? I can't even tell you off the top of my head. Adding a little one pound plate on each side, 1 pound more than what you did last week, is an easy way to provide a new adaptation or to spark a new adaptation. That's so simple. A monkey could do it, right? So I do love the barbell. It's a super useful tool, but it is at the end of the day just a tool. All right. We start introducing it then, and still we're not concerned with max effort lifting just yet. We're thinking technique overload and adding 1 pound a week. Seriously, it's crazy. But you would be shocked how quickly we can add pounds, right? And still do it safely if we just do it with a little bit of common sense. Okay. Put into practice. You guys know that I'm more of a practical guy rather than getting in the weeds with you about like literature and stuff like that. For lower body lifts, there's no reason a kid 13 to 15 years old, couldn't add, anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds per week they could do that every week for a year, if they're still like a novice with the barbell. Okay. Upper body lifts, add 5 to 10 pounds. Dude, you do that 12 months in a row and you're adding that every week. They'll go into high school with an almost 300 pound bench. You think, oh, that's too slow of progress. Well, I mean, you do it consistently. And when it's there, it's there. When it's not, it's not. And you have a good coach led by a professional. That's what's possible. You think that would put your son or daughter ahead of the game? Yeah, 100%. Okay. So it's a very linear approach, very incremental improvements. And then, hey, 15 plus, freshman, sophomore, and on. Okay. We are getting into the heavy stuff. But again, the foundation's already been set. So they're safe. Their technique is awesome. Okay. And they have the structural capacity for it. They've got a strong lower back by then. They've got a strong abdominal, their obliques, their rectus abdominis. It's all built up. They got a strong upper back. They can do chin-ups, right? I have an issue with kids going to deadlifts that can't even do a single body weight chin-up. I just think we're putting the cart before the horse. I have an issue with kids that, throw 200 pitches a week This happens a lot with softball girls because, again, females are a little bit more behind in that regard. And then they can't do a chin up, or they can't do a body weight deadlift. I can't tell you how many girls we've seen fracture their spines in games because they played too much softball and haven't done enough to actually build themselves up, build up a tolerance basically to that stress. Guys, you can't fire a cannon from a canoe. Something's going to break eventually. All right. It's sad, but it's true. Okay. So anyways, to recap, 3 biggest myths that I need you guys to get away from. Number 1, it does not stunt growth plates. All right. The old wives' tale that this is going to set our kids back. It's flat out not true. In fact, I would say it's more dangerous to not do it. Okay. And I think the research is pretty clear on that one. Okay. Myth number 2, weight training makes you bulky and slow. Again, not true. Done properly, it's going to make you strong to overcome your body weight, your body's own inertia and gravity. Mean old Mr. Gravity is always working on us, right? It's pushing me down into this chair right now. The stronger I am, the faster I'm going to be able to pop up off this chair. Okay. And myth number 3, it's only for meatheads and male athletes. Guys, we cannot take away the psychosocial aspect of training and how it benefits our kids between the ears, in the heart, and really, let's face it, the skin they put on every day. Okay. Sports are fleeting. They don't last forever. I hope that you're setting up your student athlete for success when sports are done, right? Because it'll happen eventually. It happens sooner for some, later for others, but Father Time catches up to us eventually. Okay. And I hope that I have sparked some sort of thoughts, or maybe a dinner table conversation tonight on how to avoid these same risks, and the next time that you, I don't know, or sitting in the stands with other parents and they say, yeah, we'd like to get them started in that, but we're going to wait a couple years until it's safe. Right. I hope that you have some ammo now to say, hey, you're wrong. Here's why. Or maybe go talk to Blake because he'll set you straight on that one. Okay. All right. So guys, here's what you can do. I'll leave you guys with this. Number 1, you can always email me your questions, and please do, because they give me, talk about ammo. They tell me what you guys want to hear about. This thing's for you. I want to provide value to you. If I'm not helping people in this 30-minute recording, what am I doing? But I don't know what you need help with. I'm not a mind reader. So please email me at blake@grindhousegym.com. You guys can see this. Where is it? Haus. It's spelled funky. Get that right on the email and shoot me your questions. Okay. Number 2, you can also email me about online training. I'm opening up my books, taking on 5 more athletes. Now, I don't do it with athletes under 18 years old if the parents are not engaged. So if you're a parent that wants to learn how to do this, you want to be your kid's coach, but you don't know where to start, email me. I'll give you the whole plan done for you. You can do it with your son or daughter, bond with them in the meantime, develop a meaningful relationship off the field or court, and make sure that you're setting them up for success. Number 3, attend my in-season essential seminar on August 21st. This thing's free, guys. It's free. There is absolutely not a good reason in heck that you wouldn't be there, because I'm going to set you guys up to dominate your season and not take 3 steps forward, 2 steps back when you ditch training heading into week 1. I want you guys playing well in playoffs. And that only happens if you're training well, eating well, sleeping well. I'm going to teach you exactly how we do it at Grindhouse and exactly how I do it with my pro athletes as well. All no help barred. I'm going to give you guys the entire cheat sheet on how to dominate your season. Okay. As always, you can find me at Blake Bernard Coaching on Instagram. You can find the gym at grindhouse_SC. And until next time, this has been another episode of the Train to Win podcast. Hail strength.